Well, joining me now is the Jobs and Economic Growth Minister, Ravi Kahlon. Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Why is the Premier calling for either major changes or altogether the cancellation of the temporary foreign workers program now?
Well, we've been expressing this concern to the federal government for over 3 years. When I first became the Minister of Housing, I had sent a letter to the federal Minister of Immigration at the time saying that we need to relook at not only the temporary foreign worker program, but also other programs and immigration streams and provincial nominee program across the country. And the challenges that we see in our communities are a reflection of that. I'll give you a few examples. One, we have, of course, a need for temporary foreign workers in agriculture, in some smaller communities where it's hard to get access, the talent you need for your business. But there's a lot of employers that have now essentially built their entire business plans on temporary foreign workers, where they put up postings and they don't really try to hire somebody locally, and they're just trying to get someone and they can pay them a lower wage. We also have the LMIA system, which lets employers post jobs. If nobody applies, then they can fast track somebody for immigration to be able to do that. Now, it gets used in a proper way a lot of the time, but we've also heard way too many cases of fraud where people are being charged in another country. The employers are being paid for the posting, and quite frankly, there's exploitation happening in the system. And so what the Premier is expressing, and what we've been expressing for some time, is that we need to have all the provinces at the table, and we need to have a conversation about how we get the right levels of immigration, how we structure the provincial nominee program so that we can get the right talent that we need for the right type of employment. And then if we're going to have temporary foreign worker programs, that it's done in a way that addresses the challenges we have, but also prioritizes immigration. If a person is good enough to come and work here, we believe that we should have a pathway for immigration for those individuals so they can make sure that they can, raise their families here and coach the local hockey team. So that is what the Premier has expressed to the federal government. And what we've said is that, Prime Minister Carney's actually made some good moves recently coming in. We want to be at the table to help address that challenge. And if the premiers want to come together and make some advice to the federal government, then I think that's a positive thing.
You mentioned, smaller communities perhaps that and certain industries that would be at a greater need for temporary foreign workers. We did hear from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business pretty swiftly yesterday in response to Premier Eby's comments, calling them misguided. And they said that it is those small businesses, especially in rural and remote areas, that rely on this program to keep the doors open, because those jobs, there just aren't British Columbians there locally who will take them. So what would be the impact on businesses who say we can't find local people in BC to take on these jobs?
Well, we have no disagreement with small rural communities that are having a tough time with employment-related shortages or in agriculture. That's not the issue. The issue is
Minister Kahlon? Okay, our connection has paused with Minister Kahlon, unfortunately, so we'll try and fix that for you. We do have our connection back up now with Jobs and Economic Growth Minister Ravi Kahlon. He's on the phone now. Hi again, Minister.
Hi, Michelle. So sorry for that.
No worries at all. Glad you're back with us. I want to ask you, we've just had a couple of comments here. Someone saying, the workers that he works with at the A&W at 100 Mile House, you wouldn't find young people to fill those jobs, or you would have young people who are about to go to school. So what I'm wondering is, when we're looking at the unemployment numbers growing to 7.1%, it's been climbing, is there a direct link between those unemployment numbers, rising unemployment rates, and temporary foreign workers? I know the rhetoric points to that, but is there evidence of that jobs are actually not going to young people because of temporary foreign workers?
No, this is not about blaming temporary foreign workers. A lot of the folks that are working came through because the systems have built that way. And so there should be no blame to these young people in particular that are working. And some of them face, a huge amount of racism. You talk to people who are working at even Save On Foods, the number one concern they have is the amount of racism they face from people day to day. But the challenge that we're dealing with here is how do you align the employment you have and make sure that the people locally have opportunities to get that? And, the caller before came on and said, he's from a small town. They don't have people. I get it. No problem. If you don't have the people, it makes sense. But if you have employers here in Metro Vancouver, where we're at 12% unemployment rate, or in some parts of the interior where unemployment is, 10% plus, then we surely got to find ways to make sure locals have the opportunity. And, just to comment on the other caller that called, Michelle, I'll just say that it's vitally important that we do have a pathway for people to get citizenship. That position has not changed. Having people come temporarily just to work when there's people locally that have, need access to employment, we should be prioritizing local people to be able to take those opportunities.
Okay, you've pointed to the issues around fraud. You've pointed to some industries and areas where it would still be beneficial. So it sounds like, okay, there are issues with the program itself. Why call for its cancellation altogether? Why is that on the table?
Well, because it's been years of us asking for the federal government to make changes to these programs. Not only the temporary foreign program, but other programs as well. And so we are at a point of frustration where we're saying, if you're not going to make the reforms necessary, then you're going to have to do something else. But we prefer to be at the table, as the Premier said in his comments yesterday. We want to be at the table. We're prepared to actually lead a table amongst all provinces to have this conversation, work with the federal government. Again, they've made some good moves recently to realign. We want to see a system that works. But fundamentally, if a person is good enough to come here and work, they should have a pathway to citizenship, just like my parents came, just like other people have come here to this country. We should be able to create that fair pathway. And temporary foreign worker programs should be used only in cases where there's a huge necessity. And what we feel is it's been expanded. And it's not only that, we've been having issues around the provincial nominee program, which the federal government cut by 50%, which was the only tool we had to make sure we had the right skills for the employment opportunities we need. So it's a more of a holistic piece, Michelle, that we need to address. And hopefully this is the start of a conversation between the provinces and the federal government.
Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and apologies for the disconnection.
Glad to have you back. Ravi Kahlon, BC's Minister for Jobs and Economic Growth.